Today's gospel, we hear a verse which is not controversial, but definitely needs some clarification. And that is, as Jesus is explaining why they could not cast out the demon and the illness out of this young person, he said, however, this can come out by nothing but prayer and fasting. You need to have prayer and fasting. I say it's slightly not exactly controversial, but one of the challenges is that that verse, Matthew 17:21, does not appear in all the ancient manuscripts. So it's one of those kind of, you'll see some New Testament translations will include that and some will not, and some, like the New King James, which is the basis of our Orthodox study Bible, will put it in the margin and say, sometimes it's left out. But does that mean that prayer and fasting, therefore, is not important? And of course, you're going to anticipate the answer from an Orthodox priest. Of course, fasting is important. We do fasting. But I'm going to ask us today to rethink the entire concept of fasting. Because when Jesus is talking about fasting in here, he's not talking about some kind of mild vegetarianism, sloppy or scrupulous, the kind of fasting that we call fasting in the Orthodox Church in America today, where we cut out our meats and our dairy and we eat a bunch of garbage for 40 days. This is the problem that we have, is our fasting has become a mockery of what it's supposed to be. Primarily understood, fasting should be understood as not eating anything. And within the Jewish tradition, there was this practice of fasting, not eating anything. Religiously, ritualistically, they had two major holidays which were based on keeping at least a 24-hour, usually defined for simplicity's sake, a 25-hour fast. The first was, of course, what? Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. The second was the feast of the 9th of Av, or Tisha B'Av, which you might remember I talked to you last year about that during this exact time of year, because it falls at this time of year. The 9th of Av, the month of Av in the lunar calendar, falls around July and August. This year, the 9th of Av actually has already taken place. It was in July, but one of the latest days that it will fall on our calendar will be on any year, August 15th. And therefore, I made the connection last year between the celebration of the 9th of Av and the celebration of the Dormition. And there's a number of reasons for that. I will quickly review that. First, what is the 9th of Av celebration? If you don't know, it is the commemoration of the destruction of the temple, which happened twice, once under the Babylonians and once under the Romans, and it is held in Jewish tradition that it happened on the same date, the 9th of Av. So it was a day of national mourning, and also the day of messianic hope, because it was the day that they were saying, now the temple's destroyed, now ushers in the age of waiting for the Messiah to come. But it was a day that was preceded with great solemnity, and the day itself was kept as a fast. And the tradition was that since the temple was set on fire on the 9th of Av, and that it burned all the way into noon of the 10th of Av, they actually traditionally fast not just 24 hours, but more like 36, wait until noon of the 10th day. So it's a long fasting period of not eating anything or even drinking anything at that point. In addition, the 9th of Av commemoration had 3 weeks of preparation, which included some kinds of what we would call more that liturgical fasting, which is not a complete or absolute fast, but kind of a time of sobriety and somber meditation. And during that time, especially those 9 days preceding the feast, they would eat no meat or poultry and no wine. Start to sound familiar? This, I believe, is the basis of our form of liturgical fasting or Lenten fasting that we practice in the church. It probably comes from this tradition within Judaism. But that's the second kind of fasting, or lesser fasting. The main fasting is complete fasting, not eating any food. Now, I said I want us to rethink fasting. The problem that we have now, most of us are not living in the Middle East or in the Mediterranean, which, if you know your diet fads, the Mediterranean diet is very popular, but it is actually one of the highest rated diets for health because you eat good things and healthy things in moderation. It's a great diet to follow. And you get to eat a lot of yummy things. And if you're Orthodox, you already eat that stuff half the time anyway, because you're probably eating half Greek and Arabic and Mediterranean foods all the time. In any case, we don't eat that way, right? We have a much different schedule here in the United States. Maybe we cram something in at 7 in the morning or 8 in the morning. Maybe we rush a fast food type lunch or an unhealthy lunch sometime in the middle of the day. And then maybe we scarf something down at night. And usually throughout the day, what we eat is not very particularly healthy or good. And it tends to be a lot of carbohydrates, right? We've been told for the last 30 to 40 years that the basis of our diet should be the pyramid, right? And the bottom of the pyramid is grains and carbohydrates, which is actually terrible, terrible advice. And more studies have been showing that this is the major contributor to our health epidemic in this country today. If we actually kind of ate the way they ate 100 years ago, less carb heavy and more fats and more proteins and less food during the entire course of the day for that matter, we would actually see a dramatic reduction in the types of health problems we have. Obesity, high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, and a whole slew of other things. The reason for this is that the dependence on eating a tremendous amount of grains does what to your body? Inflammation, right? It creates an inflammation response in your body. Yeah, that's why we're allergic to grass and things like that, right? It's a connected problem. And your body, when it inflames or reacts to that, it creates things like those bad cholesterols and so forth. So that's part of it. But I would say an even bigger part of the problem than even the grains is the question of fasting. Because fasting is a normal part of human experience. We shouldn't look at it as a dirty word that we don't want to do or we only do begrudgingly. Every day we fast. Every day at the moment we stop eating at night to the moment we start eating the next day is fasting. That is fasting. That's why we call the first morning meal, or whatever it is, breakfast, break fast. That's where that word comes from. The problem is that we have less and less fasting time in our culture and our society. We're tending to eat late at night, and we're tending to eat earlier in the morning. And neither of those things are good for us. So what I'm encouraging to do to make your Christian fasting more healthy for you and to integrate it into your life, because a healthy body leads to a healthy mind, and a lot of what we think are spiritual problems might very well be physical problems. You know, problems as somebody who's been obese most of my life, probably half of my struggles with depression are related to the fact that I felt so fat, you know, and I felt so lousy about myself, right? If you don't have those problems, they go away. You don't have those sugar issues, those things go away. You tend to feel better physically, therefore you feel spiritually more engaged, more empowered, and more ready to go out there and live the Christian life, okay? So what could be recommended to you, if you're willing to try, is to consider the scope of time during the day in which you're eating. If you can get down to the point where you're only eating about 8 hours of the day, so you have maybe one meal around 10, and then you don't eat anything past 6 in the evening. That's hard with a work schedule, right? So you might end up deciding, maybe I just want to eat breakfast. I'll eat a healthy lunch and a healthy dinner, and that'll be it. That gives you 16 hours of the day during which you are effectively fasting. What does that do for you? Now, the way fasting helps you is amazing. It's God's gift to you, and you don't even know it. Because after 12 hours of not eating, your body switches gears, and it goes into a different kind of way of production. That's when your body begins to restore itself and to heal itself and to start burning up all that stuff that it's been storing up. If you're eating all the time, you don't give your body a chance to do that. You don't give your body a chance to catch up with what you've been taking in, and therefore what happens? It just shoves it aside into what? Fat cells. And that's why we gain the weight we gain. Think of it this way. So you've gone to some of those big stores, those warehouse stores maybe, or those big department stores or whatever, and you come in the morning and it's amazing. Everything is laid out. There's these incredibly huge, attractive displays. And then at the end of the day, they're all tore up, right? Because people have been shopping there all day and it's kind of a mess. But then somehow magically the next day, if you were to come, it's all there again. How did that happen? Well, that's because at some point the store shuts down to business. And while it's shut down, the night shift, so to speak, takes over and they restock and they put everything back. Imagine if you were a business person and you were running one of these stores and all you did all day was receive new inventory. And you only have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of employees, and they're spending all their time trying to figure out what to do with all these trucks of stuff coming into the warehouse. They don't have any time to stock the shelves. They don't have any time to make those nice displays, and what happens? You got a lot of stuff, you got a big inventory stuck in the warehouse, and nothing being sold. Your business starts to suffer, right? That's what's happening to your body when you eat all day and not fast. That fasting is that night shift of your body that helps you transfer all of that good stuff that you've been eating and puts it into action, puts it into use so that you can go out and use it. So I encourage you all as Christians to take the concept of asceticism that we practice in the church, the concept of fasting, and apply it throughout every day of the week if you can, through what's called intermittent fasting, or the fasting limiting of your food window. Maybe you can't do only 8 hours a day, maybe you can do 10 hours a day. At least do more than 12, because after that 12 hours, that's when that good stuff starts happening for you. Human growth hormone starts to be produced, which heals you. Don't worry about your blood sugar dropping too tremendously. That's what your liver is for. It creates new glucose from those fat that you've stored. Okay, your body knows what to do. God designed you wisely. The other thing that you can do then is also take upon yourself, just as the Jews did, these periodic fasts, which are a bit longer, maybe more than 16 hours. Maybe you go to 20 hours. Maybe you try a 24-hour fast. Maybe you even do a 36-hour fast. It's tradition in Romania, at least, and many other Orthodox countries, that if you're preparing to receive communion, that you even fast for 3 days. So imagine if you stopped, say, on Friday, and then you didn't eat anything the rest of the day, and then Saturday, and then Sunday you came and you broke your fast on liturgy. That's why a lot of people don't take communion in those countries, I think. Because you can do that like once or twice a year. Most of us could do that once or twice a year and get through that, okay? But every week would be awfully hard. I certainly don't do it every week. So I always wonder, people say, do you think your priest fasts 3 days a week before he takes communion? What if he has liturgy more than once in a week? You know, he never eat anything. Maybe some of them do. God bless them. God preserves them. But it's good to do on an occasional basis, on a periodic basis, what I call periodic fasting. Take 1 month, 1 day out of the month, and do a 24-hour fast. Once you get used to this, it actually builds momentum. It's incredible. You start to feel good. You start to feel positive. You start to feel the metabolic changes that I'm talking about. You might want to do 48 hours, no more. Realize that the fasts, as they started in the church, began that way. The fast before baptism, the original Lenten fast, if you will, was originally 1 day before baptism, then 3 days. Then the whole Holy Week, when it was attached to Pascha, all of Holy Week became a fast. The 40-day fast that we celebrate actually is a later thing that kind of gets standardized in the 3rd and 4th centuries. But the practice of periodic and intermittent fasting is part and parcel to the early church's approach to our relationship with food. And again, the spiritual benefits I think you find as well. I'm still testing this hypothesis, so I won't say anything definitive. But I think not only does those metabolic changes and those physical changes help, but there is a spiritual clarity that comes to us when we're not indulging our senses and not focusing on the feeding of physical pleasures, which is such a huge part of food. We have a toxic relationship with food in our culture. Food can be medicine, right? Because it has the healthy things we need to heal ourselves. But too often we treat it like medication. See the difference? I feel bad, I feel lousy. Wow, a cupcake would really go nicely right now. I've had a long, hard day. Hey, look, there's the Baskin Robbins. You know, that is a dangerous problem. Now, if you're intermittent fasting and you're fasting periodically and you're eating healthy otherwise, you can visit those places on a rare basis, and it won't throw you off. But to make that your go-to coping mechanism in life, which I admit I have done often in my life, too often, especially when stress and trauma comes into your life, right? When you just want to grab the hamburger, the fast food, you just want to drink a soda, whatever. That is not healthy for us. And it does impact, it does kind of keep that snowball of negative effect rolling spiritually. So brothers and sisters, long story short, I'm just encouraging you to rethink your fasting. Don't separate it out from the rest of your concerns, your health concerns, your mental health concerns, your spiritual health concerns. Integrate it. Anything we do in the church is supposed to make sense. Everything we do in the church should have a practical implication on our daily lives. If it's not, we're probably not doing it right. God does not ask us to do things that are hurting us. And very often, the way we fast in this country is not very helpful. Through the prayers of our Holy Fathers, especially the Holy Fasters, Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen. Christ is among us.